trial against former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan continues. How much longer is it going to go? Not sure. The prosecution still bringing up some witnesses and revealing all kinds of evidence. Stuff we've already heard, but some stuff we haven't heard. To talk about this and more, here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up each and every morning with us and get the headlines at thecentersquare.com. Joining us now is Jim Talamonti, the reporter from Chicago, in the courtroom each and every day here. Jim, thanks for taking time with us. Obviously, it's been a long week for you, and it looks like things are going to get just a little longer here. How are we looking on the case? What have you heard? Some new stuff, some old stuff, some compelling stuff?
Yesterday, we got it all, Greg. It was action-packed, really. And I'm not, there have been times during this trial when things have lagged and things have dragged. And the previous day, Wednesday, Fidel Marquez, fifth day, court day on the witness stand. Through cross-examination, there was a lot of repetition. Several times, Judge John Robert Blakey scolded defense attorneys for, repeating questions, asked and answered, sustained, asked and answered, sustained, and multiple times. But then Marquez final morning with the redirect testimony. It was a strong performance, I think, by prosecutor Amar Bachu. And I thought Marquez came out less damaged than I expected him to come out as a guy who was convicted of bribery, has multiple, concealing stuff from his wife in a divorce proceeding, money, lying on a gun application, something you covered earlier this year, Greg, in Arizona. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And although that was all brought out, the recordings and so anyway, Marquez finishes and then prosecutors just rapid fire. Diane MacArthur, recording after recording after recording, a series of emails, further cementing the prosecution's case here, and then witness after witness. We went through, after Marquez, 8 more witnesses, primarily ComEd and Exelon employees involved, or former employees who had, from IT to legal to financial, document after document, testimony after testimony. And then we got into as well FBI agents who raided the homes of some of these Madigan campaign workers. And so we heard from 3 different FBI special agents based in Chicago about what they found at the homes of, names like Frank Olivo, former alderman in the 13th Ward. That's Madigan's ward, where the ward office in Chicago is shared with Madigan's state representative office. And then we heard about Ed Moody, one of the precinct captains in the ward. Michael Zaleski, not the state rep Michael Zaleski, but his father, who had been a Chicago alderman, also connected with the Madigan campaign machine. And so it was I don't know if that I'd call it shock and awe, but it was a continuous pounding. And
what's fascinating there is that came after Marquez was on the stand for like 6 days or something?
6 parts of 6 days. It was long, and there was a lot. I think
part of that is because, listen, I mean, he had a lot of evidence to support some of what he was talking about. The wiretap phone conversations. I do want to play here this clip because we've seen the dinner between McClain and Marquez from the ComEd 4 trial, talking about and if maybe you can help set this up better, but they're talking about trying to get a job for a Madigan ally at ComEd, and the new ComEd CEO at the time is a former federal prosecutor, and Marquez is like, I don't know if this is going to fly. Explain a little bit more of that video.
And part of this, Marquez is now cooperating with the government, so he is also setting up these meetings to get information out of McClain, right, to help his own cause, because he's facing heavy jail time if he doesn't cooperate and help the government and be truthful and all that. So he's having this dinner. But part of it, too, is just that Dominguez, being a former prosecutor, Joe Dominguez is taking over as ComEd CEO for Ann Pramaggiore, who was convicted in the ComEd for a bribery case last year. And Marquez is afraid that he's just not going to be as friendly to Mike McClain and all of these do-nothing jobs that Madigan allies are getting with ComEd that's just been part of the program there for years and years, maybe even decades, because we heard about meter readers that Madigan was able to appoint back in the, in the 80s and 90s.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
because
this
it's
is
just the old school patronage system. But instead of, people being appointed to be a meter reader, we don't have meter readers. We just have former politicians that did stuff for Madigan. So our friend. But what's fascinating here, and I'm going to play this clip. It's only about 20 or 30 seconds, if that. It's at the beginning of the dinner that Marquez and Madigan had. And I want to play this because this is stuff that was not revealed during the ComEd 4, and it's interesting to kind of compare and contrast, right? Because the dinner that they had, from my remembering last year when this was first presented, long video, not much talk about Madigan, more about the job. But at the beginning, they did reveal just a brief little blip about McLean talking of when he wanted to retire, handing Madigan a note. So this is the new stuff that was revealed, from my understanding of the comparison between the ComEd 4 evidence and the evidence that was brought up this week. Let me pull this up and get the audio turned on so that the audience can hear this.
Just for Madigan, all the things that I'm responsible for.
That you're responsible for? Okay.
When I retired, and I handed it to him. And he started reading it, and he says, I don't think you're done yet. He gave it back to me.
That's funny.
He wouldn't take it.
Is that like tendering your resignation, but that gets denied? It gets rejected?
So again, the video goes on from there, and people can actually see the entire 11 to 12-minute video at America's Talking Network on YouTube, or you can find it in Jim's story. But clearly, McLean says he gave Madigan kind of a retirement letter and said, "No, you ain't going nowhere." And this just kind of shows more of what prosecutors are saying was Madigan Enterprise, a system to try to use Madigan's office to curry favor from ComEd with favorable legislation in exchange for little to do nothing jobs for Madigan allies. Is this going to stick? How's the jury looking when they're getting this information?
That's the big question. There hasn't been a lot. There hasn't been a lot of expression from what I've been able to tell when I've been noticing the jury. There hasn't been a lot of expression. There's been virtually none from Madigan. McLean has heard a lot of this before from the ComEd 4 trial. He same thing. So I haven't seen a lot of even when in the cross-examination Marquez, when defense attorneys were raising their voices and there was some attempt at making this a dramatic scene. It didn't seem, like there was a whole lot of emotion or a whole lot of reaction, just kind of taking it all in. And even yesterday, as it was, at times I thought, wow, they're really plowing through this stuff. Are they, is this being digested? And you don't know what's in jurors' mind. They get at every break, they get the instruction from the judge. You're not to discuss the case. Talk about the case. If someone asks you about the case,
that's got to be so tough.
And it's so exactly because you just want to talk about this, right? I mean, so we can, thankfully.
Especially, absolutely, free speech. Love it. So obviously, the jury's got to be getting exhausted here. It's already been, 3 or 4 weeks, and we're looking at maybe 8 more weeks. What's the rest of the timeline look like, especially when it comes to the possibility of defense witnesses? Are we going to see witnesses taking the stand to talk favorably about McLean and Madigan?
Great question. The judge brought that question up yesterday. And I will say, before we talk about his timeline, that the judge has gone out of his way for the jury to give them longer breaks. The afternoon break is a half hour. Yesterday, they made an exception because prosecutors asked, they wanted to get through all these people. Some of them had traveled in to be witnesses. They didn't want to hold them over the weekend because there's no court today. But he's given them breaks. There was an early exit on Halloween, a late start on Election Day. So he's been very careful. He gives them the early exit on Wednesdays to take care of personal days. Friday, he says, is your day to the jurors. This is your day. No court. But he did ask all attorneys a week ago for their revised estimate because he said this is 11 weeks is wildly off, quote unquote, wildly off. And he says, my math, last week he said 13 weeks. This week he said 14 weeks. And he said, not including defense case or deliberations. He's still waiting on the estimate from Madigan attorneys. Apparently, he got the estimates he asked for a week ago from the McLean attorneys, from his team, and from the prosecution. He's asked again Madigan's got an army there.
Wow.
5 lead defense attorneys at his table. So that we hope to get on Monday from that group. But the judge is saying his math, 14 weeks total, not including defense case. They haven't said whether they'll be calling witnesses. They've introduced some pieces of evidence here and there, but and a recording in one case, but no actual no mention of whether, we don't expect Madigan or McLean to testify, but they could.
Maybe that's McLean a question you can ask Madigan when you see him coming in the mornings, because you've been there every day and he's waving. He sees you. He knows you now. Interesting stuff. Yeah, there.
Most days he's been fairly cheery, and McLean even now gives us a wave when he kind of tried to avoid the cameras at first.
Day. He actually gave you like a salute.
He did, and his wife kind of looks at us. Cinda looks at us a little more suspiciously. Or some days it's just me because there aren't other photographers there. Now, when we get to Danny Solis, who prosecutors said may testify next week, the former Chicago alderman, then the Chicago media horde will be back from the city council show that was going on yesterday, and they'll be back to show undoubtedly to try to capture Daniel Solis coming into the courtroom. So we'll have some more fireworks we expect to be more fireworks when Solis comes.
We'll be watching all of this. Jim Talamonti, reporter for the Center Square up in Chicago. People can read your work there. Greatly appreciate you taking the time, and you are a trooper going through all of this because, it's going to be a long slog. We got the holidays coming up. We got Christmas and New Year, and oh boy.
We'll go well into January with this.
And it's pretty incredible. Greatly appreciate you as always, and we'll talk again in the near future. Jim Talamonti, reporter at the Center Square. It's right here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and you can wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, Illinois in Focus, and also be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for America's Talking Network.